A group of teenagers looking to have some fun on Halloween deface a gravestone and unknowingly unleash an evil entity known as Jacko. JD's and Lennelman, welcome to Jacko. Welcome back to another Cryptid movie review. I just want to say, uh, I noticed right off the bat, the movie is listed just as Jacko, but the title scene says Jack-o'-lantern, so we are already off to a great start. uh, we start out with a heavyset man, just weirdly holding a pumpkin next to a campfire, and he's like, "Trick or treat, Sean." And we see a young kid sitting with him, and he gets up to grab the pumpkin from the creepy dude. Um, and he gets the pumpkin, and he sits back down, and the creepy dude is like, "Mr. Jack will break your back, cut off your head with a whack, whack, whack," and then tells Sean there's a story behind that nursery rhyme and asks if he wants to hear it. Sean just nods, and creepy dude starts telling a story about how the pumpkin man will steal your soul, and for some reason there's just a creepy looking lady standing behind Sean in the fog, just staring at them. He says that way back the villagers caught a wizard, and he cursed them so that Jacko would come get revenge. And some old farmer who owned the farm where they are currently sitting was going to fight Jacko. And apparently the farmer had the same last name as Sean. So we get a flashback of this farmer's son, Kelly, and his mom, the farmer's wife, they're going to bid the farmer farewell. And he just like starts quoting the Bible, and is like, he's making these crosses out of sticks and stuff. Kelly is like, "Where you going, Daddy?" Like, he wasn't just sitting there listening to this whole conversation. And now we see Sean. He's waking up, and it's storming outside. And he looks through his blinds, and when you know it, Jacko is walking up to the window. But then Sean wakes up again. So it was a dream. It was a dream in a dream, I guess. Inception. Sean and his buddies are now walking home from the bus, and they see a bunch of pumpkins sitting there. And this alfalfa looking kid is like, I bet that's the head of Mr. Jack, and goes into some song about Jacko. And Sean is all like, "My dad said he isn't real." And alfalfa is like, "Yeah, but your dad probably said the witch isn't real too. But look, here she comes." And it's that creepy lady that was standing in the fog in the beginning of the movie, but now she's pulling up in a car. They hide behind some bushes, and alfalfa picks up some rocks and tells them they used to throw rocks at witches and then burn them, and throws the rocks, but he has a super weak arm and like barely comes close to the car at all. I'm pretty sure the lady could hear everything that they're saying, because she keeps looking over at him and making a face like she farted or something. And it was very strange. Alfalfa goes to throw some more rocks, but Sean stops him, and then they start to fight. And when I use the word fight, It's very loosely. It's just Alfalfa holding Sean down, and Sean pretends to struggle, all while the girl that's with him just sits there and says nothing. Our witch gets out of the car and walks over and grabs Alfalfa by the collar, and he screams because she scared him. And she's like, get off of him. And Alfalfa just runs away. Um, the witch, whose name is actually Vivian, um, and she's like, thanks for saving my car. Can I give you a ride home? And Sean tells her he's not allowed to ride with strangers. So she just walks him home. And his dad is hanging a sign on the garage, but it looks like he just painted it on the bed sheet. His dad and Vivian are talking, and apparently the dad puts on a spook house, and Vivian really wants to help with it. We then see Sean walking in the house, but like the back door is open or something, and it's all dark and foggy, even though it's actually broad daylight. So naturally, Sean is like, screw it, and he just walks into the darkness. We then get a weird like jump cut and are back with Dad and Vivian, and he asks why she's there. So she informs him that she is writing a book on her great grandfather and says, your family and mine are tied together for many years. Mom pulls up, and Dad then introduces Mom and Vivian and tells her that Vivian wants to help. And she's like, well, we can't pay you, but we can feed you. And then another jump cut, and Sean is back in the dark woods. He walks up on a guy in a cloak, and he tells Sean he can't resist him, so Sean just runs away. Like, Sean can't, not like the old dude's like, I can't resist you. He says, like, you can't resist it, whatever. We apparently are jumping back and forth between real life and the dark woods now. Vivian is looking around the house. She just looks angry, and Sean is in a barn, seeing the farmer find his wife and son murdered. And I'd say he is pretending to be sad because now there's a random dude and a chick asking Sean for help, and they're all bloody, and Sean faints. Vivian then wakes him up, and he's like, I had a bad dream. And she's awkwardly rubbing his shoulders while she talks about dreams and is like, your dad tells me your favorite show is on. Would you like to go watch it? And now the adults are having a super awkward conversation about dinner, and Vivian says she can't stay. Side note, the mom is creeping me out. She keeps opening her eyes as wide as she can every time they show her, and is just terrifying. I think she might be on drugs. But we see three random people pull up to what was the cemetery in town, and they're drinking. And one guy stumbles on a headstone. He's like, I found something, something old, and then screams off camera. And then the other two people come running up, and he's pretending to be dead, and shows he has absolutely no skill with women. Sean and his dad are watching a show called Dr. Cadaver's Monster Movie Madness, and judging by the monster makeup, I feel like we would have some good ones to review. Sean's dad shuts the TV off and asks him to go with him to check on their haunted garage. And his mom comes in with her big ass eyes and groceries, and we find out Sean is a creep and he has a crush on his babysitter. And his dad is just as creepy, thinking the babysitter has a crush on him. We're back with the three people in the graveyard now. They find a cross made out of sticks that the farmer made 100 years ago, and it looks like it was just made. One of the guys goes to take it, and his friend is like, have some respect for the dead, as if all three weren't just trying to mess with headstones. Back at Sean's house, Sean's mom calls babysitter and is mad because the babysitter has a party to go to on Halloween and she didn't call to make sure she could actually watch Sean. So like that's cool. Uh, we get to see the babysitter, uh, Carolyn's neighbor, who oh, I'm sorry, we get to see the babysitter whose name is Carolyn. We see her neighbors, who are basically like a knockoff Margot and Todd, and I'm not sure what the importance of was showing them at this point. Because now we're back at Sean's house and his dad's tucking him in, and Sean is very concerned about Jack, and his dad tells him it's not real, which means he's definitely going to show up soon. Carolyn, the babysitter, her younger sister and her boyfriend are running around in the woods and playing kissy face, and her boyfriend falls right by the wood cross, and he pulls it out of the ground, and then we see some really bad post production lighting, and then we are back in Sean's room, and he's having a nightmare about Jack and his great grandpa, which is the farmer. And then we see his mom and dad. Um, they're kneeling before the dude we see in the cloak from earlier, and he says something about not everyone is lucky enough to get his attention, and then the scene is just over. So it's very anticlimactic. Um, Jack is crawling out of the ground now, and the cross bursts into flames for some reason. But Sean is still having the nightmare, and the cloak dude is like, I find them guilty. And then his parents get all wavy looking and are like, help us, Sean. And cloak dude is like, kill him. And so Jack's peeping on our trio from earlier. And then he slits the two guys' throats from like 20 feet away. And then we get the damsel in distress taking the hardest route out of the woods and tripping over everything trope. Jack somehow is ahead of her and slits her throat too. And we see Vivian is there in the woods for some reason, and hears everything happening, and then finds dead bodies. And then Sean wakes up from his nightmare to look out the window, just to wake up from the nightmare for real again. It was very weird. Vivian is hearing Cloak Dude talk through her locket, since Cloak Dude is her grandpa, and she carries a picture of him everywhere. And Caroline and her sister and her sister's boyfriend all pull up on the same motorcycle, which gotta admit, pretty impressive. And she compliments Sean's dad on the yard decorations and is like, you're a little boy about all this stuff, and then says, I like little boys, which, creepy. Sean is checking out the motorcycle, and the dude is like, you ever ride one of these? And Sean is like, not lately, and just hops on the bike and takes off with the dude, and Sean's dad barely makes an attempt to stop him. And then his mom comes out and is like, how could you let this happen? Even though all they did was ride to the end of the cul-de-sac and back. Vivian then shows up to help with the haunted garage, carrying a family Bible, I guess, and opens up to a picture of her grandpa and calls Sean over. Sean asks, who is it? And his dad calls the guy creepy. And Sean is like, I see him in my dreams. Vivian is not very good at hiding her disgust with Sean's family. She is constantly scowling at them. Also, I'm not sure why they needed a babysitter, considering the parents are just in the garage. But at the same time, Dad, Vivian, and Sean are all watching movies together in the living room while the babysitter's there. Dad asks Vivian if their families were close, and she's like, he was accused of sorcery and your family killed him. I'm talking about her grandpa. And she's like, Don't worry, time heals all wounds. And Sean tells them to shut up because he can't hear the movie. And then his big-eyed mom gets sassy with his dad, like, stop sitting with that harlot on the couch and help me. She says Vivian creeps her out and asks how long she is going to be there, and Dad says until we close the haunted house. You know, the one they aren't working in. We're back with Margot and Todd now, and they're mad that trick-or-treaters are at their house, which it's Halloween. But Todd is like, what are you looking for, a handout? I make my living selling food. You want something from me, you need to buy it. And he slams the door on them, and the kids are like, good thing we have these rolls of toilet paper. And then they TP his house. Todd comes running out, and Jack's standing there, and he tells him to get out of his yard, and then just goes back inside. And now we're back at the haunted garage, and Dad's finally opening it to the public, but there's absolutely no one around except Jack. Naturally, Jack's he's just peeping on trick or treaters that are now showing up to the haunted house. So people are actually coming now, and his dad is like, everyone look creepy, and Vivian is just in her street clothes. But then we're back with Margot and Todd now, and they're watching some crazy dude talk about people breathing his air, and says he won't let the liberals take his TV antenna from him. And then some teenagers steal Todd's hubcaps, and when he goes out to find that they stole his hubcaps, Jack murders him. Margot then finds Todd, and she runs back in the house, and she grabs a butter knife and ends up slipping on the rug. And when she falls, the knife goes into the toaster, and she electrocutes herself. It was very Final Destination. But anyways, the babysitter and her sister are supposed to take Sean trick-or-treating, but the sister sneaks out the window, and her boyfriend is waiting for her on his motorcycle, and they just take off. The kids from earlier at Margot and Todd's come back and see Todd dead and are like, cool decoration. Sean and Carolyn show up to the creepy dude from the very beginning of the movie. They're at his house, and he's like, I've been expecting you, Sean. And so far, everyone is really creepy towards this kid. It just gives me really weird vibes. Carolyn's sister and her boyfriend stop to get frisky with each other, and Jack shows up. So she puts her shirt back on, and her boyfriend is like, whatever, babe, and just leaves her there. He just got up and left. We get to see Mom's big ass eyes again, and she pretends to be a vampire that eats kids. And our cocky kids from earlier, they're at the haunted garage now, and Jack tries to grab the boy, and then they run away screaming, and Dad is like, oh yeah, buddy, we got them good. And Vivian, in all her wisdom, is like, or maybe it was something else. So Dad goes inside to investigate what scared the kids inside the thing that's supposed to be scary. He sees a shadow behind a curtain, and when he goes to see what it is, it's just a rake. And then he knocks a whole shelf of paint over somehow. It is like watching those infomercials where people can't do like the most simple things. Anyways, Vivian is like, something's been here, and Jack is just inside the house messing stuff up with a sickle. But he's also able to be out in the woods where Carolyn's sister, Julie, that's her name. I keep forgetting her name. So yeah, he's in the house messing stuff up, but he's also out in the woods. So I guess that makes sense. She's out on the road where a random cable technician is just fixing stuff, and Our cocky kids think that they hear something, and it's just Julie's boyfriend that was hiding in the tree line, and he scares them off with his motorcycle for some reason. And Julie also happens to just walk out of the tree line, and right where all this is happening, and he's like, "You still mad at me, baby?" And she's not even like, she's not even mad, like even though he just left her in the woods in the dark. Uh, we then see Dad gets a phone call from the cocky kid's mom, and he's like, "You mean to tell me they seen a pumpkin man and dead bodies all over the neighborhood?" And he, doesn't believe it. So he's going to go find Sean, who's not back from trick or treating yet. Oh, and the haunted garage is done, but Vivian is still there, just chilling on the couch. And then Julie's boyfriend gets ganked right after he calls Jack a butthead and throws a cigarette at him. Uh, he cuts his head off, and it manages to like roll right into Julie's lap because she's like sitting on the ground. So she gets up and she runs away, and the cable guy, who's in his bucket truck committing OSHA violations, and she's like, "Get in the truck. There's something out there." And he says, "No, there's not." And then Jack kills him. Creepy campfire dude is out with his dog, and the dog is whimpering, and he's like, "What do you see, the boogeyman?" And then Dad comes fumbling out of the woods and scares him. And creepy dude is like, "Yeah, I seen Sean a while ago. I scared the hell out of him," and just keeps laughing. So Mom then uses her big ass eyes to see someone messed up Sean's room, and Dad knocks on the front door before coming in for some reason. It's his house. Um, and Mom's like, "Where were you? I looked everywhere for you." And he asks, "Didn't Vivian tell you I went to go look for Sean?" Uh, who I can't find, by the way. And they show Vivian just looking mad on the couch with that family Bible thing, just staring at a picture of her dead grandpa. Carolyn and Sean are walking through a park, and Jack shows up, and they like try to hide under a very open playset, and Jack just stands there instead of attacking them. And then Carolyn makes Sean climb through the playset, not just to the open side, uh, through the ladder to get away. And then Jack knocks her out. Doesn't kill her, just knocks her out. Sean finds a toasted Margot, and when he turns around, Jack is just standing in the doorway making "come here" hand gestures, and then Sean hides under a TV tray. It's not a very good hiding spot. Mom, Dad, and Vivian are at the table talking about the curse, and she's like, "I used Sean as a decoy." And Dad's like, "She's insane." To which she says, "Why do you think I'm here?" Apparently, only the fifth male descendant after the farmer can kill Jack, so Sean has to do it, which is hard to believe because Sean can barely manage to like walk through a front yard without falling. Sean then gets back to his house, and the door is stuck, which isn't a big deal at first, because Jack's just standing there, and then you see Sean's hand on the window and of the door, and blood shoots up onto it. But it turns out it was just grape juice, naturally, from one of those like Hugs barrel drinks. But Sean's gone. So they all get in the car and they go out looking for him, and they find Julie's boyfriend's bike and head, and then Vivian starts talking to her locket, and is like, "I know where they are going." And when they pull up, Dad just happens to have two identical pieces of ash that the original cross was made out of in the trunk. And Vivian's like, "Get the hammer." And the hammer is an 8-pound sledgehammer, and she can barely swing it and hit the nail. But Sean is running and he's constantly tripping, and Jack is like slowly walking right next to him, but not making an attempt to catch him until Sean turns around and Jack just points at him, and Sean just climbs into a grave and completely monotone is like, please no, as Jack uses the scythe as a shovel. Sean is still monotone and is saying, no, as someone off screen throws dirt directly into his face. And Sean is barely covered at this point, and for some reason just stops moving, like the weight is just too much. Vivian gets there, and Jack looks at her, and she's like, you know me, don't you? And then opens the locket and shows him the picture in it and says, I'm the last of the ones that brought you into the world. Now go back to hell. And mom and dad are lost and ask, where did she go? And she yells, over here. And then Jack stabs her in the stomach and throws her into the air like 30 feet. We get a flashback of how the farmer stopped Jack before dying. And then mom and dad run up, and dad's like, give up the boy. And Jack's like, nah, and hits dad in the face. Sean climbs out of the grave, making it seem like he was completely buried, even though we could see his entire body shortly before this. And again, monotone, says, leave my mom and dad alone. And then dad tackles Jack, and he gets impaled on the cross they built and then bursts into flames. Jack bursts into flames, not dad. But it's daylight now, which was very quick. Sean and his family are making their way out of the woods, and Carolyn finally is waking up at the playground, and Julie is coming out from under the bridge she was hiding under, and just so happens to walk right to where Carolyn is. And then everyone meets up at Sean's house, and he's like, do I have to go trick-or-treating next year? And mom's like, not if you don't want to. But dad has his priorities right, and he wants breakfast. So they walk off into the distance and talking about where they're going to go for breakfast. Happily ever after. But then we see a decoration that looks just like Jack's head, and it looks like there's like fire on the inside. And then that's it. That was the end of the movie. So, Jacko came out in 1995 and was directed by Steve Latshaw, and it is currently on Tubi. I'll be honest, I did not enjoy myself on this one, so the GoFundMe is live again. 2 on the Cryptid meter. I was bored, the acting wasn't great, and the story was meh. So, save your time and don't watch this one. I'll see you guys again next week, hopefully with a better choice.